Now we're going to talk about what's called tweening. Now, tweening is a very weird word. And what tweening is it's a way for us to animate things more easily. Now, classic animation is created by what's called frame-by-frame animation. And the premise here is that, and I'm going to create some different frames here. Actually, let me do this. I'm going to put an object in here. This is a frame-by-frame animation. I'm going to hit F6 to create a new keyframe. Okay, and in that keyframe, and then I'm going to hit F6 again, F6 again, and I'm just basically using the keyboard to move the object around. Actually, I'm not sure that I need to do that. F6. Yeah, I don't need to select it. So I can just hit F6 to create new keyframes and then create a new position each time for this square. And it will effectively make it look, this is my scrub that I'm going to grab here, it'll effectively make it look like my square is moving across the screen, which is effective, plenty effective enough, but it's kind of time consuming. I mean, that's a really silly basic animation. And it took me, well, not terribly long, a minute, but it took a little while. Tweening is going to do this for us. Now, the word tweening comes from the idea that we have the first frame of an animation, the last frame of an animation, it's easy for me to say, and the tween will create the frames that are in between. So tweening is an abbreviation of in-betweening. Okay, so that's essentially what it's doing, is that I'm going to tell the computer, this is the starting point for my object, this is the ending point for my object, and I'm not going to move it in between. I'm just going to let you take care of that, because you're a computer and, you're coded smart like that, and you can do those kinds of things. So let's actually create a new layer and do that now. I have this layer, and I've put a bunch of keyframes in. We'll discuss these different. Essentially, we're adding another dimension to our documents now. We're adding time, and that's what each of these are. These are frames on our timeline, which is now making our animation actually play longer. So I'm going to create that new layer. I'm going to create another object, and I'm going to create it up here. You know what, I'm going to make a different object, because that's just boring to have green squares all the time. It'll be, and no fill. So I'm going to make a red ball, or a red circle. And now I'm going to do what's called, I'm going to use what's called a motion tween. Okay, there are several different types of tweens, and I'll show you what I want to do with it here. I'm going to select the entire timeline. Right-click gets me the contextual menu, and you can see up here at the top we have Create Motion Tween, Create Shape Tween, Create Classic Tween. We'll talk about each of these. We can also go to Insert, there we go, on the top menu, Insert, Motion Tween, Shape Tween, Classic Tween. I'm going to create Motion Tween, okay, for now. It's going to tell me that it has to convert the selection into a symbol. Just say OK for now. We haven't talked about what symbols are yet, and you will get to the point where you understand symbols. For now, we're just going to go ahead and tell it OK. That's fine. Okay? And alright, what did I do wrong here? I'm not sure if that's what the deal is. I may have to. No, it's working. I'm not sure what that error message was. I did something that made the computer angry, but it's working nonetheless. Okay, so what I did was, let me take a step back. I was thrown off by the error message there. What I did is I created the motion tween, and now I notice that these frames are now a light blue color, and that's actually communicating that there's a tween here. But the tween isn't doing anything, because I didn't tell it to do anything. I have a starting point, I have nothing else. What I can do with the tween is, I can actually select this layer over here, move my object, and you can see here I have this line now that goes across. I also have a little diamond on my timeline, and that diamond represents what's called a property keyframe. The property keyframe is a reference that you'll get only with motion tweening. And the property is essentially the new position and anything about that particular object. You can also see here I have dots on this little line. And the dots actually are going to coincide with the number of frames that transpire. If I were to actually hit F5 in the middle of this a couple times, you can see that now I have much, because I had the entire span selected, it actually added not just one frame, but a new set of frames for each of those spans. But you can see I have many more dots on this line now, representing all of these additional frames that I just entered. And if I scrub this back and forth, you can see what happens. My object is moving along. It created the in-between animation for me. Now there's some really cool things that we can do. We can actually manipulate this line. I can actually grab this line and manipulate it like so. So now my object actually follows a path. It swings like a pendulum almost. You can have a lot of fun with this. So the motion tween is actually a very easy tween to use. Now you're going to find yourself using the motion tween a lot, particularly early on. But let's look at some of the other types of tweens that we have available to us. I'm going to create another layer. Oh, and you can see here my layer has actually changed the icon to represent that that is actually a tweened layer. I'm going to create a new layer, and I'm going to do what's called a shape tween now. And I'm going to create a rectangle down here, and then I'm going to see if I get this right the first try. I'm going to empty that frame and put a object up here in the corner in that frame now. And I'll change the color of it as well. And then I'll right click and I'll tell it I want a shape tween. There we go, and it worked. Okay, so what I did was, let me take a step back and show you again, step by step. What I want to do is I want to create an object that actually morphs from one object to another. So I created this rectangle here in the bottom right hand corner. Now on the last frame, I hit F6 to create a keyframe here in that last frame. Then I went ahead and I deleted the rectangle. And I created a new piece of artwork, which was a blue polygon. And let me play with the options on that. Let's do a star. Okay. Up here in the upper left-hand corner. Then I came back into the middle of that, right-clicked, and told it I wanted to create a shape tween. And now you can see in that frame I have this strange looking object. And if I scrub back and forth, you can see it's actually a rectangle turning into a star. Changes color, changes shapes as well. And now we have yet another type of visual communication here. I have this green looking set of frames with the arrow also indicating a tween. And the reason why the motion tween looks different from the shape tween, the shape tween and the classic tween have been with us for a long time. The motion tween is actually relatively new, and it functions differently. So it's going to communicate some things differently with us as well. Now I can still manipulate this tween as well. Like let's say I want to rotate that star a little bit, and now there you go. Now it'll do its thing. I wonder if I want to. Let's play with what's called shape hints as well. Let's really get crazy with this. We can put hints down. We can morph essentially any type of object we want into another object. And right now I have a rectangle and a star. That's very easy. There's really not much to that. But sometimes we end up with really complex objects. And that's where these shape hints are going to come in. So I'm going to insert, I believe, timeline, no, modify, and shape, and there we go. Add shape hint. I had to find the right spot. Click that. It added a shape hint for me. I'm going to move that one to the bottom right hand corner. Modify, shape hint. Move that to the upper left hand corner. Now I'm going to go to the final part of the animation. And I'm going to kind of flip these around. I'm going to make them do weird things. Now what I've done is I've put these shape hints on there. And what those are going to dictate which parts of the objects are going to morph in the beginning are going to morph into which parts of the object at the end. So my first part of the object, I have my A point down in the other corner, my B point up in the top corner, and then on the star, excuse me, now the A point is over here on the upper right, the B is kind of in the middle left, and let's see how that changes the animation. It didn't change the animation very much, actually. Let's get some more extreme. Let's move that one down here, and this one up here. See what that does. Oh, it almost makes the star like flip. Okay, so we can do some cool things with the shape hints. But what the shape hints are going to do is that it's going to essentially control part of the animation for us, like control how this is actually going to morph as it shape tweens across the stage. So that's a pretty handy little tool. Now the classic tween, let's do a classic tween. Classic tween is going to set up a lot like the shape tween. So we're going to have an object and then a keyframe at the end. And then there's a couple of different options. So let's show you that. Let's create a new object. Let's make a primitive. Yeah, let's make it, yeah, that color looks fine. And I'm going to tween it up here to the top corner. So I'm going to do F6. Actually, maybe I'll just move it across the bottom. So F6 and grab move it across the bottom. Right click, tell it classic tween. There we go. And it's, oh, that's kind of funny. It's even intersecting with my object. It's almost like I got a logo right there. Okay, so there we go. That's the classic tween. And it doesn't appear that there's a whole lot going on. But let's look at some of the functionality we have here with the classic tween. And we're going to go over to the properties inspector for that. We have rotate, which is kind of cool. I want to rotate it. Let's make it rotate counterclockwise, and we'll tell it we want to do it 5 times. Now, when we tween it, the C rotates as it goes across the screen. Let's actually change the rotation to clockwise. Make it look like it's actually rolling, not spinning backward. No, it's whoop. There we go. It's rolling across the screen. So that's a classic tween. In addition to that, what else can we do here? We can also, we'll get into sounds later. Easing, we can make it speed up and slow down, but that's something we're going to talk about a little bit later. Now, you're not going to find yourself in a situation where you're going to use the classic tween all that often, and really, if we didn't have a circle here, you can see here, even though it's a circle, and we really couldn't show you it tweening much. Well, actually, you know what? Let's do this. Let's make that squish, and then we'll turn some rotation on for it as well. So we can rotate that one as well and squish it. So we can do pretty much everything with a motion tween that we can with a shape tween. So typically, which is what I meant to say a moment ago, we're going to be using the motion tween a whole lot more than we're going to be using the classic tween. Now, there are some things that I still like using the classic tween just because that's kind of the tool I used. You're probably going to be more comfortable with the motion tween, so if you ignore the classic tween, that's okay. It's no big deal. It's a great tool, the motion tween. And the classic tween really isn't going to offer you any more functionality than the motion tween will. So that's all right if you find yourself using that to the motion tween more than the classic tween. So there are some basic tweens and some introduction to some of the timeline functionality that we hadn't seen yet.